Thanks for joining me today, Tsahi. We're going to talk about lots of different ways that AI and GenAI are used in WebRTC algorithms. So let's start with some explanation of how WebRTC algorithms used to work before AI.
Okay, so I think it boils down to voice over IP, video conferencing, and then WebRTC. And we used to do everything by hand, which means that someone decided that this should be the algorithm of how you do things. This is how you filter information, this is what to do to send it over the network, this is how you compress things. And then these pre-written rules were simply coded into the actual application itself. And most of the algorithms today in WebRTC probably still like that because it makes sense. Okay. Then comes machine learning. So now I don't want to do all of the coding myself, or let's say I don't want to decide on what the thresholds are. I want them to be decided by something else. The machine should do that based on something that it learns from the past. And that is machine learning, or what we all call AI because we're whitewashing everything with marketing. A good example of that is NR noise. NR noise is a small algorithm, machine learning based that looks at an audio track and says this bit that's noise, this bit that's speech. Okay, so it can um, do a classification of the audio that passes to decide if it's speech or voice. What is it good for? A lot of things. You can do VAD with that, voice activity detection, but also things like Opus encoder. Opus is built out of two codecs. There is Silk there and Celt, and the one that you use depends on if this is voice or music. So voice or noise, speech, sorry, or noise. Okay, so that's using machine learning inside an algorithm. We've seen over the past, I'd say, 5 years, an attempt to take everything that is in WebRTC and change it to use machine learning. There are also areas where you can't really use just rules. For example, background blurring and replacement. Machine learning can do that, just rules won't work. Okay, so there are things that you can't do with manual rules. And now we've got this new thing called generative AI, ChatGPT. Essentially means creating something from nothing. That's how I look at it. And if I want to create something that wasn't there before, I use generative AI. And again, the question is, okay, where does it fit in WebRTC besides the prompting stuff of a voice bot?
Right.
Okay, and there are places where you can use that.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about some examples of that, because for the purposes of our discussion today, we're not really talking about chatbots uses of generative
Mhm.
AI. That's more like around the video call, let's say. Um, we're talking about how are these things used within
Yep.
algorithms themselves. So there are plenty of people in
Yes.
our industry and in VoIP who kind of they made their PhDs on defining an algorithm, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
doing that analysis, then machine learning comes along. It can make that more dynamic, more responsive to the situation. And then now you're defining Gen AI as an addition to that, as something where you're creating part of creating packets from nothing, for example, right?
Mhm. You said something important though. You said, well, we're not talking about generative AI and chatbots because that's around WebRTC.
Mhm.
So I have a question. Does background replacement is around WebRTC or part of WebRTC?
Okay, good question. I would say it's not specifically part of WebRTC, but from the user's perspective, it's very much part of the video experience. So that's the distinction I would draw there. What would you say?
Okay, so now I'll make it harder on you. Do you think that in a year or two from now, doing something like translation, transcriptions, or summaries is going to be, from a user's perspective, something that shouldn't be part of the experience or must be a part of the experience?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I think that it is going to be an inherent part of the experience in most situations. and probably something that's built into a lot of the work that we do, right? So, like even in a situation like this, there may be in any tool like the one we're using for recording this, that there would be some captioning built into it automatically, right? But I think
Yeah.
that so there's going to be a lot of stuff built in, and therefore from the user's expectation, a part of the video experience, but lots of places where people like you and I don't want to build something with the built-in captioning. There's something more,
Yeah.
more interesting or dynamic
Yes.
going
So
on.
it's funny because this tool already has captioning, just does that on the offline part.
Right.
And I usually ignore it because you start cropping stuff, so captioning doesn't work. And also, when you upload it to something like Vimeo or YouTube, they have their own
They put their own
automatically
on, right.
captioning. And so it's like, I guess one of the big questions that I have with myself is where does WebRTC ends
Yeah.
and the stuff of machine learning and generative AI begins? Because it's not easy to find that line.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I'm sure a question that, you and I both will continue to come back to in these conversations and in
Mhm.
our work, because all of this is becoming an inherent part of our work, just like, maybe the person who was doing the original, uh, you know, encoding algorithms in a purely
Mhm.
mathematical way didn't anticipate to the degree to which machine learning would factor into that now. But I guess
True.
I suppose for the purposes of our conversation today, we're mainly talking about those types of things like compression and noise suppression,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
encoding that are built into it. But you're raising some excellent questions there. What is the video experience? All right, so let's play a little game here. I'm going to throw out a couple of algorithms at you, and you tell me,
Mhm.
are they math, are they machine learning, or are they generative AI? So let's start
Okay.
with voice activity detection. You mentioned.
Okay. Voice activity detection today is likely, just math. That's how you do things around here. Okay. And probably machine learning is where it's headed. There are machine learning based solutions for VAD, some of them client side, some of them server side, because they're apparently too big to fit into a device. But that's about it. I don't see it using generative AI.
Yeah. Unless I suppose you're combining it with something else, so built-in translation, not just captioning, like we mentioned a moment ago. But what about
Yes, but
built-in
again,
translation?
the VAD part is classification of something. It's not the creation of something.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Is it noise or music or speech?
Mhm.
Which in my case, noise and music would sound the same. But yeah. What about something like packet loss concealment?
Okay, packet loss concealment, definitely math.
Definitely math. Historically,
Until the
and
point, well, yes, until the point that Google came and made WaveNet EQ or whatever they call it, that says, well, we're going to train packet loss based on what we received before. And then when there is packet loss, we're going to estimate what should have been there and isn't. So we are going to generate packets out of nothing. So generate something from nothing, which is kind of generative AI.
yeah,
Now, we do it today on voice, or we can do it today on voice. The question is what happens when we start do that on video.
right, right. Uh, yeah, and the gosh, I'm forgetting who the speaker was right now, but I remember the conference speaker I saw recently talking about doing this on video live of replacing, like in their example, they were holding a beer bottle in their hand and trying to scrub that out of the video in real time.
Mhm.
So that would be a combination of machine learning and possibly generative AI, also in the sense that you're
Yes.
anticipating what the video packets should be behind that object once you remove it, correct?
Yep. Yes, but now I'm anticipating it's like if I'm trying to use machine learning, in this case generative AI, for something like packet loss concealment in video, I'm looking at past frames and deciding what the next one should have been based on the movement or the context of what is happening there or whatnot, or I have no clue what I'm talking about at the moment. So it's like, but I'm sure that it's coming. just depends on when.
Yeah, for sure. All right, one last one. What about encryption, like end-to-end encryption? Is there a role for generative AI in that?
That's hard to say. I think today it's math, pure math, and that's it.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing that it's going to stay that way.
Yeah,
First of all, because you're trying to put privacy to something and you want to receive exactly what was sent.
Mhm.
So, what would generative AI help you with here? What would be the point?
right.
And then I don't see how machine learning can make it better than it is today.
Okay.
Um,
Really a
where
math.
you see machine learning taking place or even generative AI taking place in encryption, at least for now, from my experience, and I'm not an expert, that would be on the other side to crack stuff.
To break it. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yes, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, do you know how can I break to this and that? And well, I searched the internet, and here are 3 great ways for you to do that. Um,
Right. Right.
how do you use that inside an application dynamically to improve encryption? I don't see it happening soon, at
Yeah.
least not in WebRTC.
Yeah, maybe not in a positive context, but on the other side, as you said,
Mhm.
only. All right. Well, so that concludes this quick edition of Is It Math? Is it Generative AI? Or is it machine learning? But I know there will be more about this, topics like this, in your upcoming workshop. Do you want to tell us quickly about that before we close?
Yeah, so I'm going to have next month a workshop about generative AI and WebRTC, about what it means to connect them to one another, what are the challenges that you are going to deal with, and one of the things that I'm adding there is this game of 21 algorithms of WebRTC and where do they fit? What are they exactly? Just to know and understand where we look and find generative AI. Most of the workshop is going to be obviously around LLMs, but I think that part is also important.
Mhm. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, as always, Tsahi, for sharing your insights with us today. For those of you watching, to learn more about Tsahi's work, you can check him out at bloggeek.me. To learn more about future episodes of WebRTC Live, check us out at WebRTC.ventures. Thanks, Tsahi.
Thank you, Arin.
Thanks for joining us for WebRTC Live. Visit our website at WebRTC.ventures to learn more about our custom design and development services, and to learn more about upcoming episodes of WebRTC Live.